Have you ever found yourself lost in thought, only to wonder where those thoughts even came from? One moment, you're focused on something important, and the next, your mind has drifted to an old memory, a past regret, or worries about the future. It almost feels like thoughts have a life of their own, appearing and disappearing without your control. But if you are not deliberately choosing these thoughts, then who or what is actually thinking them? Are you truly the thinker behind your thoughts? Or is there something deeper at play? For thousands of years, Buddhist philosophy has explored this exact question, offering profound insights into the nature of the mind, consciousness, and the self. One of its core teachings, dependent origination, pratityasamutpata, explains that everything, including thoughts, arises due to specific causes and conditions. Thoughts do not exist in isolation. They emerge based on past experiences, emotions, and external triggers, often without our conscious choice. Understanding this can lead to a transformative realization: you are not your thoughts. Instead, you are the awareness that observes them. This shift in perspective is the key to mental clarity, inner peace, and true freedom from unnecessary worry and suffering. Now, let's dive deeper into this mystery, starting with how our thoughts arise and why we mistakenly believe they define us. Chapter 1: The Mystery of Thoughts. Thoughts appear in our minds every moment of the day. Sometimes they are useful, helping us plan, solve problems, or recall important information. Other times, they feel like an endless stream of distractions, regrets, and worries. But where do these thoughts come from? Imagine this: you're washing the dishes, completely focused on the task. Then, out of nowhere, a random thought pops up. Did I lock the front door? Or, I need to call my friend. You weren't trying to think about these things. They just appeared. This isn't a mental glitch. It's the default state of an untrained mind. Our brains are wired to generate thoughts automatically, based on habits, memories, and external stimuli. Without awareness, we get pulled into this cycle, mistaking the endless stream of thoughts for who we are. Buddhism has a term for this restless mental activity: the monkey mind. Just like a monkey jumping from branch to branch, our thoughts leap from one topic to another, planning, analyzing, judging, worrying. This constant chatter makes us believe that there must be a central thinker controlling it all. But is that really the case? Let's do a simple exercise. For the next 10 seconds, try to predict your next thought. Close your eyes and try it. Could you do it? Probably not. The moment you try to predict your next thought, you change the conditions of how your mind operates. This simple experiment reveals a profound truth. If you cannot predict or fully control your own thoughts, then how can they define who you are? Buddha himself deeply observed this phenomenon during his meditation under the Bodhi tree. He noticed that thoughts arise and fall away like ripples in a pond, appearing and disappearing without a permanent thinker pulling the strings. The illusion of a permanent self. Many of us assume that if thoughts exist, then there must be a self behind them, a thinker generating and directing them. But what if this self is just another thought within the stream? Buddhism challenges the idea of a permanent, unchanging I through the concept of anatta, no self. It teaches that what we call me is actually a collection of shifting experiences, thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and sensations, all arising due to causes and conditions. Consider this analogy. Your thoughts are like a river. The water is constantly flowing, never the same from one moment to the next. Yet, we mistakenly believe that there is a solid, unchanging river when, in reality, it is just a continuous movement of water. Thoughts behave the same way. One thought about work leads to a memory of a past mistake, which triggers anxiety about the future. This chain reaction happens so fast that it creates the illusion of a single self controlling everything. What happens when we stop controlling thoughts? Trying to force thoughts to stop is like trying to stop a river with your hands. It only makes the water more turbulent. The harder we try to control our minds, the more chaotic they become. So what if, instead of fighting the current, we simply observe it? This is where mindfulness, sati, comes in. In Buddhist teachings, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to thoughts as they arise, without judging them, suppressing them, or getting caught up in their stories. The The Satipatthana Sutta, one of the foundational texts on mindfulness, teaches us how to observe our thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains vast and unaffected. Right now, let's try another exercise. For 10 seconds, just observe your thoughts. Don't try to change them. Just watch them pass by, like watching cars on a highway. Did you notice anything? Maybe you felt a slight pause, a little more distance from your thoughts. That is the beginning of mental freedom. Modern science confirms ancient wisdom. This isn't just an abstract Buddhist concept. Modern neuroscience supports this idea. Research by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, has shown that practicing mindfulness literally changes brain structure, reducing stress and improving focus. MRI scans reveal that mindfulness strengthens the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, and weakens the amygdala, the brain's fear center. This means that the simple act of observing thoughts rather than identifying with them creates emotional stability and clarity. By shifting from "I am my thoughts" to "I am the observer of my thoughts," we take a powerful step toward freedom from worry, self-doubt, and unnecessary mental suffering. Chapter 2. The Empty Center Searching for the Thinker. In the previous chapter, we explored how thoughts arise seemingly on their own, without conscious effort, without a clear origin. But this leads us to an even deeper question. If we are not our thoughts, then who or what is thinking them? Most of us instinctively believe there is a thinker inside our minds, an internal self that controls and directs our thoughts. It feels as though there is someone home within us, watching over our mental activity. But is this true? Is there really a central self behind all of our thoughts? Buddhism challenges this assumption through the concept of anatta, no self, one of its most profound and radical teachings. Instead of assuming there is a permanent I controlling our thinking, Buddhism invites us to investigate this assumption directly. So let's do exactly that. Can you find the thinker? A simple exercise. Take a moment, close your eyes, and try to find the thinker behind your thoughts. Where exactly is this self that generates your thoughts? Is it behind your eyes, in your brain, in your chest, somewhere else? Can you point to it? Can you locate it? Try not to think about it too much, just observe. If you truly look, you might notice something strange. There is no single thinker that you can find. Instead, what you discover is just more thoughts. Thoughts about searching for the self, thoughts about where the self might be, thoughts about how it all feels. But a separate, unchanging self behind the thoughts? Nowhere to be found. This is exactly what the Buddha discovered during his deep meditation under the Bodhi tree. He saw that thoughts, emotions, and experiences arise and disappear, but nowhere could he find a fixed, unchanging thinker. What does this mean? It means that our belief in a permanent I who is in charge of thinking is just an illusion. The 5 aggregates, breaking down the illusion of self. If there is no fixed thinker, then what are we? What makes up our experience of being me? To answer this, the Buddha introduced the concept of the 5 aggregates, Panchakhanda, the 5 aspects of human experience that create the illusion of a self. These are form, rupa, the physical body and senses; feelings, vedana, sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutrality; perception, sana, the ability to recognize and label experiences; mental formations, sakra, thoughts, habits, emotions, intentions; consciousness, vaya, the awareness of experience. Every moment of our lives is made up of these 5 processes, but none of them are permanent or fixed. They are constantly changing, coming and going. Buddha's insight was that what we call I or self is simply a collection of these shifting experiences, not a solid, unchanging entity. A well-known Buddhist teaching explains it this way: this is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. This realization is deeply liberating. It means that we are not trapped by our thoughts, past, emotions, or self-doubts, because all of these things are not truly us. The story of the monk Kamaka, A Search for the Self. A classic Buddhist story illustrates this beautifully. A monk named Kamaka once deeply investigated this question of the self. He asked himself, "Is my body me? No, because the body constantly changes. Are my feelings me? No, because they come and go. Are my perceptions or memories me? No, they also change. Are my thoughts me? No, they appear and disappear on their own. Finally, he realized that even the thought, "I am the one who is thinking," was just another mental formation, another thought. This profound insight freed him from suffering, and he attained deep peace. What this means for us. Understanding this truth is not about denying our experiences, it's about seeing them more clearly. It's realizing that there is no fixed self behind our thoughts, only a flowing process. Think of it like this. Your thoughts are not the self. Your feelings are not the self. Your memories are not the self. Even your awareness of all of this is not the self. Then what are we? We are simply awareness, a vast, open space in which all experiences arise and disappear, just like clouds drifting through the sky. This realization is not just philosophy, it is something we can experience directly through meditation and mindfulness. A new way to relate to our thoughts. Now that we understand there is no single thinker behind our thoughts, how does this change our relationship with them? Instead of identifying with every thought and believing it represents who we are, we can start to observe thoughts as passing events. Imagine you are sitting by a river, watching leaves float by. Some leaves are big, some are small, some drift quickly, others slowly. But you are not the leaves, you are the observer watching them pass. This is how we can relate to our thoughts. We don't need to fight them, control them, or believe everything they say. We just watch them without attachment. This simple shift in perspective reduces anxiety, stress, and suffering. The freedom of not being your thoughts. By realizing that thoughts arise on their own and do not define us, we gain incredible freedom. Instead of being controlled by worries, we can watch them without fear. Instead of being trapped by self-doubt, we can let it come and go. Instead of clinging to the past or fearing the future, we can rest in the present moment. This is not just Buddhist wisdom, modern neuroscience supports this idea too. Studies show that practicing mindfulness reduces overactivity in the brain's fear center, the amygdala, and strengthens areas related to self-awareness and emotional balance. By learning to step back and observe our thoughts, we cultivate a calm, centered mind, one that is no longer a prisoner of automatic thinking. What's next? In this chapter, we explored the illusion of a fixed self and how thoughts arise without a permanent thinker. In the next chapter, we will dive deeper into what exists beyond the thinking mind. If we are not our thoughts, then who are we truly? How can we cultivate clear awareness beyond thinking? Stay tuned as we continue this journey of discovery. Next time you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts, try this. Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Instead of reacting to your thoughts, just watch them like clouds in the sky. Remind yourself, I am not my thoughts. I am the awareness that sees them. See what happens. You might just discover a new sense of inner freedom. Chapter 3: The Clear Awareness Behind Thinking. In the previous chapter, we explored how thoughts arise without a fixed thinker behind them. We saw that what we call the self is not a solid entity but rather a collection of changing experiences, thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and sensations. This naturally leads to an even deeper question. If we are not our thoughts, then what are we? Beyond the constant stream of thinking, there is something more fundamental. Something quieter yet infinitely more profound. A simple yet powerful capacity that allows us to observe thoughts rather than be trapped by them. This is awareness, the silent witness to all experiences. The background of awareness. Imagine a vast open sky. Clouds come and go, sometimes light and wispy, sometimes dark and heavy. But no matter how many clouds pass through, the sky itself remains open, spacious, and unchanged. Now think of your mind in the same way. Thoughts are like clouds. They arise, change, and disappear. Feelings are like the weather. Sometimes stormy, sometimes calm. But awareness is like the sky itself. It remains vast, untouched, and open. This awareness is not a thought. It is not something you create. It is always present, always here. It is the silent knowing that allows us to perceive everything we experience. The Buddha referred to this as sati, mindfulness, the ability to be present with experience without getting caught up in it. Anuruddha's awakening, the power of pure awareness. One of the most famous stories of awareness in Buddhism is that of Anuruddha, a disciple of the Buddha. Anuruddha was struggling with meditation. His mind was restless, constantly distracted by thoughts. He tried hard to control them, to push them away, but this only made things worse. Frustrated, he sought guidance from the Buddha. The Buddha's advice was simple. Do not fight your thoughts. Simply be aware of them. Let them come and go like leaves floating down a river. Observe them without judgment, and soon your mind will settle on its own. Anuruddha followed this advice. Instead of resisting his thoughts, he watched them with gentle awareness. Over time, his mind became clear and still. Eventually, he experienced deep insight. He saw that his thoughts were not his identity, and behind them was something even more real, pure awareness. Through this practice, Anuruddha attained deep peace and spiritual awakening. The difference between thoughts and awareness. To understand the power of awareness, let's compare it to a mirror. A mirror reflects everything placed in front of it, a face, an object, a sunset. But the mirror itself remains unchanged. Similarly, awareness reflects all thoughts, feelings, and experiences, but it remains untouched by them. Now, here's the mistake most people make. We confuse the reflections with the mirror itself. We believe that because we have certain thoughts, those thoughts define who we are. We believe that if we feel anxious, we are an anxious person. If we feel anger, we are an angry person. But in reality, these are just temporary experiences arising in awareness. They are not who we are. Example. Imagine you feel anxious about a big decision. The thought arises, what if I make the wrong choice? If you believe you are your thoughts, you might spiral into self-doubt. But if you remember that you are the awareness that sees the thought, you can step back and say, there's the thought of doubt. It's just passing through like a cloud in the sky. This simple shift in perspective changes everything. The science of awareness, how mindfulness changes the brain. Modern neuroscience is beginning to confirm what Buddhism has taught for thousands of years. Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, discovered that practicing mindfulness, simply observing thoughts instead of reacting to them, physically changes the brain. Studies show that mindfulness, heavy checkmark, reduces stress by calming the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Heavy checkmark strengthens emotional balance by increasing gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. Heavy checkmark improves focus and clarity by enhancing neural connections. By stepping back from thoughts and simply observing them, we create more space in the mind. This allows us to respond wisely rather than react impulsively. Buddhists have known this for centuries. When the mind is silent, wisdom arises. A simple practice, watching the mind like a sky. Let's try a simple mindfulness exercise right now. Sit comfortably and take a deep breath. Close your eyes and notice your thoughts. Instead of reacting, just observe them like clouds drifting across the sky. Each time a thought arises, silently say, thinking. Let the thought pass on its own. Do not hold on to it. After a few moments, notice. Did you feel a small sense of space between you and your thoughts? Did you notice how thoughts come and go without effort? This is the beginning of true inner freedom. Beyond thought, the stillness beneath the noise. Most of us live our lives caught in constant mental noise. We analyze, plan, worry, regret, imagine. We jump from one thought to another, rarely experiencing true silence. But beneath all of this, there is something deeper. Have you ever experienced a moment where your mind felt completely still? Maybe during a sunset where time seemed to slow down. Maybe in deep meditation when thoughts disappeared for a moment. Maybe while listening to music, feeling fully immersed. These moments reveal something profound. There is a place of silence, of pure being, that exists beneath all thoughts. And that silence is always there. It is not something we need to create. It is our natural state. The ultimate realization. You are awareness itself. Buddhism teaches that when we stop identifying with our thoughts, we awaken to our true nature. We are not our fears. We are not our worries. We are not even our happiest thoughts. We are that which sees it all. A great Zen saying expresses this beautifully. Before thinking, who are you? Take a moment and let that question sink in. Who are you before a single thought arises? That silent, knowing presence, that is what you truly are. And when you realize this, a great peace arises. What's next? In this chapter, we explored the difference between thoughts and awareness, how Buddhist wisdom and modern science reveal the power of mindfulness, how we can begin to observe thoughts rather than be controlled by them. In the next chapter, we will explore how to live with this awareness every day. Heavy checkmark, how can we use this knowledge in daily life? Heavy checkmark, how do we navigate challenges with mindfulness? Heavy checkmark, what is the practical path to inner peace? Stay tuned as we continue this journey of discovery. For now, try this. The next time a thought arises, pause for a second. Ask yourself, who is noticing this thought? Rest in the awareness behind the thought. You might just feel a glimpse of something deeper, something timeless. That is the beginning of true peace. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Chapter 4. Applying this understanding to daily life. We have explored the nature of thoughts, the illusion of a permanent thinker, and the clear awareness behind them. But now, a crucial question arises. How do we take this wisdom and apply it to real life? Understanding is one thing, but true transformation comes when we integrate these insights into our daily experiences. In this chapter, we will explore how to live with this awareness in practical ways. Heavy checkmark, how to navigate stressful situations with mindfulness. Heavy checkmark, how to cultivate a wiser relationship with thoughts. Heavy checkmark, how to use this understanding to find greater peace and clarity in everyday life. 1. Shifting our relationship with thoughts. Most people live their lives completely identified with their thoughts. They believe, I am my thoughts. If I think something negative, it must be true. If I worry enough, I can control the future. But through our exploration so far, we see that thoughts are just temporary events in the mind. They are like passing weather. When we stop identifying with thoughts, we can respond to life more wisely instead of being controlled by emotions and mental chatter. A simple practice: observing thoughts without judgment. Set aside 5 minutes. Sit quietly and simply watch your thoughts. Each time a thought arises, mentally label it. Say to yourself, worrying, planning, remembering, judging. Let the thought pass without clinging to it. Over time, this practice creates a gap between you and your thoughts. You no longer react automatically, you observe, then choose how to respond. This simple shift can profoundly change how we deal with stress, relationships, and daily challenges. 2. Managing stress and difficult emotions. Stress, anxiety, and negative emotions often feel overwhelming because we believe they define us. For example, I feel anxious, so I must be an anxious person. I made a mistake, so I must be a failure. But when we see thoughts and emotions as temporary, passing events, we stop over-identifying with them. Mindfulness in action. The stop method. Next time you feel overwhelmed, try this 4-step mindfulness technique. Heavy checkmark S. Stop whatever you are doing. Heavy checkmark T. Take a deep breath and bring awareness to the present moment. Heavy checkmark O. Observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment. Notice what is happening. Heavy checkmark P. Proceed with wisdom and kindness toward yourself. By pausing and observing, you shift from reacting to responding. Instead of getting lost in thoughts, you see them as passing clouds in the sky. 3. Using thoughts as tools, not as masters. The Buddha never taught that we should stop thinking altogether. Thinking is useful for solving problems, creating, and learning. The key is to use thoughts wisely, rather than letting them control us. The middle way, finding balance with thinking. Instead of suppressing thoughts, we acknowledge them. Instead of clinging to them, we let them come and go. Instead of being controlled by thoughts, we use them as tools. This approach is known in Buddhism as Yoniso Manasikara, wise attention. It means paying attention in a way that leads to wisdom rather than confusion. For example, if you are problem-solving, use thinking with purpose, then let go when needed. If you notice a negative thought, acknowledge it but don't believe everything it says. If your mind is racing, take a break, breathe, and return to the present. By using thoughts as tools rather than identifying with them, we find greater clarity and peace. 4. Living with greater presence. One of the most valuable teachings in Buddhism is learning to fully experience the present moment. So much of our suffering comes from regretting the past, worrying about the future, being lost in thought instead of truly living. Bringing mindfulness to everyday activities. Try practicing presence in simple daily activities. Heavy checkmark: when eating, pay attention to the taste, texture, and experience of food. Heavy checkmark: when walking, feel each step, the movement of your body. Heavy checkmark: when listening to someone, be fully present, rather than planning your response. By training ourselves to fully engage with the present, we experience life more deeply. 5. The freedom of letting go. At its heart, this teaching leads to one simple but profound realization. Heavy checkmark: we do not have to be controlled by our thoughts. Heavy checkmark: we do not have to be trapped by stress, worry, or mental noise. Heavy check mark, we can let go and experience life with more ease and clarity. This is true freedom, not the elimination of thoughts, but a new way of relating to them. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we have explored. Heavy check mark, thoughts arise and pass on their own. They do not define us. Heavy check mark, we can observe our thoughts instead of reacting to them. Heavy check mark, mindfulness allows us to respond to stress with greater wisdom. Heavy check mark, thinking is a tool, but we do not need to be controlled by it. Heavy check mark, by being present, we experience life more fully. When we begin to live with this awareness, something shifts. Life becomes lighter, thoughts lose their grip, and we find a deeper sense of peace within ourselves. This is not an abstract philosophy, it is something you can practice every day. As you move forward, try this simple question. Right now, in this moment, am I fully present? When you ask this, you may notice a small shift, a quiet spaciousness, a deeper clarity. And that is where true freedom begins. Smiling face with smiling eyes.